Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for your patience. As always, I want to make sure all of my technical stuff was working really well, and I had a couple of glitches, but I do believe that I'm live and that you can all see me and hear me okay. Now, I would love you to just give me a little comment to let me know that you can hear me, that you can see me. What I will mention is I do believe that to comment, you will need to be logged into a Gmail account or a Google account, because this webinar is actually linked through YouTube Live with some different technology. Anyway, I won't bore you with the details, but if you would like to comment, ask questions, all of that stuff, then please make sure that you are logged in so that you can do that. Hello, Rita. Lovely to see you there. Hello, KT. Hello, Lou. Hello, Brianna from Cairns. Glenda is tuning in from New Zealand. So just let me know where you're hailing from. It's really lovely to see so many of you guys on today. Hello, Jenny from Newcastle, and hello, Diane from Darwin. Now, I'm going to answer each and every question that all of you have this evening. So if you put a question in and I don't answer it immediately, there's going to be some times at the end for a bit of Q&A. And in this Q&A, you have the opportunity to really ask questions specific to what's going on for you, anything you're confused about. Let's actually clear it up. And the Q&A is something that we can all learn from, even if it's not your particular problem. Okay, so let's get stuck right in. Today, I'm going to talk about quite a bit of stuff, right? And if any of you have ever attended any of my events before, you'll know that I like to get a lot in, and sometimes I can talk really fast. Okay, you will get the recording of this webinar, so if you miss anything, then please, go back and check out that recording as well. But we're going to talk basically about how the immune system works, the different components, and this really will give us information to look at when we're looking at remedies, therapies, interventions, even what we're doing in our lifestyles. We want to be thinking about which parts of the immune system that this is actually going to impact. I'm going to talk about some really important principles of building good immunity, the things that will knock you down and the things that are going to build you up. Okay, how herbs and supplements can support immunity a lot. So we have a lot of content to get through this evening. But the first thing I wanted to do was really just to introduce myself and let you know a little bit about my story and where this information is coming from, I guess. So I'm a clinical naturopath with over 14 years experience. Personally, I've helped over 5,000 patients one-on-one, and at the Shift Clinic, which is my business, we've helped about 15,000 people so far to be well. So the principles that we use is when we're looking to understand a health problem, we're really interested in understanding the landscape of your entire health. What are all the pieces that make you you? And as you'll see as we go through immunity, this really becomes clear that it's not just about taking one supplement or doing one thing. There's a lot of complexity that we really need to honor and look at. So I want to just start with sharing my story about how I became a naturopath and why I became a naturopath, and I guess where my passion for all of this stuff comes through. So I am originally from Melbourne. So I grew up in Melbourne in the western suburbs in a place called St. Albans. And I had quite a tumultuous childhood. So my father was an alcoholic, lots of domestic violence stuff going on in the home. And I had a really traumatic childhood, right? So I went down, I guess, sort of what you would call a typical route where I ended up, skipping school, smoking marijuana, and one thing led to another. And when I was 15 years old, I ended up addicted to heroin and homeless, living on the streets of Melbourne. And in fact, in this picture here, where these train stations used to come in, this is where a lot of us homeless youth used to kind of live and hang out there. So obviously this was a really big part of my life and really shaped who I am today. I was very, very fortunate that at the time a friend of mine was moving to North Queensland, and I was living at a halfway house girls home at a time, young girls home. And a friend of mine said, "Hey, we're moving to Daintree, far north Queensland. Would you like to come with us?" And thankfully my mother allowed me to go. I was 15 years old. And I ended up in the Daintree rainforest. And it was here that I really began my own personal journey of healing, both through the power of nature and being in a very, very different environment, but also through the people that I met and really having the resources to be able to, work on myself a little bit more. I met a family up there called the Penns, and Jenny Penn was the mother of the family, and she very quickly became like a second mother to me. We would sit at her table and have cups of tea and hang out and talk about all kinds of things. But unfortunately, Jenny had a condition called lupus, and lupus is a progressive autoimmune disease. And it was the first time in my life that I'd really noticed and seen someone that was really seriously sick. So the sicker that Jenny got, the more that her medicine cabinet grew and grew, but her symptoms really never got better. And something really sparked inside of me to want to make a difference and do a better thing. So what I did was I actually stumbled across a book on herbal medicine, and I read it and I thought of Jenny, and I wondered of all the people that could be helped that weren't being managed properly in the traditional medical system. And I went off to study naturopathy. Now, unfortunately, while I was at university one day, I got a phone call from Jenny's daughter, Bonnie, and she said, Kat, mum's passed away. And I'd never had anyone close to me that had died before, so it brought up a whole heap of emotions around, not being able to help her, because I was, of course, studying naturopathy so that I could learn some skills and go back and help Jenny. But also that, we just have to do better by people. She was 43 years old. So Jenny is still with me today and really is a big part of why I do what I do. And one of my really big emphasis is on education and empowering people. And this is why I guess my journey for naturopathy has been very, very strong in clinical practice. But now in my later years of practice, I'm really, really excited about just sharing this knowledge far and wide to everyone. And that's why we have free resources, we have paid resources, and we have a lot of other things available to people. Okay, so these days I'm a published author. You might have read my book, Get Well, Stay Well. So this is looking at the foundations of health. I released that book actually about 7 years ago now. I am the host of an award-winning podcast called The Shift. So The Shift is an audio documentary series featuring now 48 experts on health and wellness. So each season is actually kind of curated into a documentary style effect using the different our different experts and then me narrating it. So that's something that is a really great resource that you can guide you guys to. And I'm also the founder and boss lady at Shift Clinics. And this is our Shift Brisbane headquarters where all of the magic happens. So we have a multimodality here in Brisbane where we have acupuncture, naturopathy, hypnotherapy, a whole heap of stuff. And then we also service members worldwide with our virtual natural health memberships. So the point of all of this is I've been in the health and wellness industry for a very long time. And the information that I'm giving you is based on years of real clinical research working with patients on a one-on-one basis, but also really with the knowledge and understanding to read the latest science and to be able to present that to you guys so that you can take that and utilize it in your everyday life. And that's what I live for. So today we're going to be talking about building immune resilience. Okay, so what does it mean to have immune resilience is probably like the first question that I want to raise with you. What does it mean? It's normal for us to actually be encountering viruses, bacteria, things that are actually going to challenge our systems. When it becomes abnormal or we lose this natural resilience is when suddenly these pathogens are able to get through and infect us and cause illness on a regular basis. Okay, it's actually really unusual to have somebody that never, ever, ever gets sick. And by never gets sick, I mean they haven't had a cold in the last 5 years kind of thing. And there can actually be a certain dysfunction with that in a way as well. But it's not very, it shows us that we're not really in optimum health if we're constantly battling things. And the reason I decided to put on this immune resilience webinar is because that's all I'm seeing in my clients, in my community, in my friends, and even in some of our team, and we're some of the healthiest people in the world, you would think. So this is something that really is affecting all of us on an epidemic proportions. And yes, COVID has a massive role to play. But I also think it's not necessarily just COVID, which in the nature of how it works does impact our immune systems. But it's also the chronic unrelenting stress, uncertainty, and fear that we've all been experiencing individually and collectively for the past 2 years. So I would love to hear from you guys if you agree. But I know myself personally, I've been really affected by this pandemic. I'm a business owner, I'm a mother, I've had to make some decisions and, do some really hard work to get through some really extenuating circumstances. There's been periods where I've lost my lifelines, of fitness or mental wellness or whatever it is. And I'm sure that you guys are the same. Um, so when we're looking at what's going on at the moment, I believe it is a combination of people having COVID-19 and the inflammatory cascade of reactions that happen as a result of that. So I'm going to talk about long COVID in another webinar masterclass in a week's time. So make sure you register for that one as well, also free. But COVID does seem to impact people's immunity, and for some people lead to this kind of viral interference where you'll have one virus and you can get another virus at the same time, and it causes a little bit more issues to come up and cause problems for people. Okay, so definitely more people are sicker than they've ever been in my practicing lifetime as a naturopath. Absolutely. And this is despite us having better nutrition than ever. A lot of the time back in war times or back in times where our parents or grandparents went through times of extreme stress, there were food shortages and other stuff like that. We haven't really experienced that, but what we have experienced are high levels of chronic and unrelenting stress. So I want to talk about how that is related to the immune system, okay, and everything. And when I was going through the pandemic, and especially that first year, and the messaging was very vaccine heavy, and I'm not going into a vaccine or not vaccine space, okay, but what was missing was, okay, I think it's okay that they went down that vaccine pathway. What I think was not okay was that they acknowledged that a lot of the reason why people were getting so sick and dying from COVID, and still are, was because of the depletion that they already had in their body. So people who are getting taken out are people who are in high risk categories. So they're elderly, okay, or they have chronic disease, which means they're in inflammatory states. So things like diabetes, heart disease, dementia, cardiovascular, etc. And it's people that are already in this level of depletion and ill health, really, like a lot of us are. So my biggest thing, and still is, around COVID-19 and what's happened with that is, how do we actually spread a message to go, this is what will happen to our population if we're not healthy enough to fight viruses? Because it's not going to be the last virus, and it hasn't been the first, right? So we need to think really clearly about population health. It's about longevity of life. It's about us not dying earlier than we should have of a chronic and preventable disease, which a lot of people will, 82% of Australians, in fact. And it's also about thinking about future pandemics and how do we actually not get ourselves in this situation? Because imagine a world where everyone was robust enough to fight off COVID, or nearly everybody. What would have happened? No lockdowns, none of the response that was going on, no fear, no uncertainty, no anxiety, no destroying of small businesses and other organizations. It wouldn't needed to happen if our population health as a whole was robust. Okay, so we want to build immune resilience because it betters our population health. Okay, that went onto a little bit of a soapbox and a rant. So I'm going to move on so we can get through some of this stuff. But I hope that you understand my passion behind this, that I really believe that we could be doing more. Okay. All right, so let's do a little bit of kind of physiology, biochemistry type stuff, right? Just to kind of understand the immune system a little bit better. So you have three different parts of your immune system: your innate immunity, your adaptive immunity, and then passive immunity is also something that can happen. So innate immunity is the immunity that we're born with. It's things like the barriers of your skin, the acid in your gut. It's like your mucous membranes. It's sort of the immune system that's there all the time as a protective mechanism. Okay. Adaptive immunity is the immune system that adapts depending on what's coming in. So your adaptive immunity might be like, okay, I've been exposed to COVID. I'm then going to create antibodies against that, and that's then going to prevent me from getting it again for a period of time, right? Or it might be that you get chickenpox. So once you have chickenpox once, you're not going to get it again. You may get shingles develop as an adult, but your immune system will deal with the chickenpox virus as it was. Okay, so that's the adaptive part of your immune system. Passive immunity is when we have immunity that's passed on from another. So this is when, for instance, mothers pass antibodies onto their babies through their breast milk, which is really, really cool when you look at how that works. But that's an example of how we can gain immunity from another. Okay, so from a barrier function, we've got things can get into our body through the skin, and through the lungs and through the digestion, which is a really big one actually, because a lot of the time we're actually ingesting these things, right? Bodily fluids form part of your immune system. So tears, saliva, stomach acid, even the way that we urinate frequently keeps pathogens from coming up the urinary tract. So these bodily functions are actually really, really important for us to prevent immune problems and to prevent infections from getting in. A lot of us don't realize that 80% of our immune system is actually in the gut. a lot of us that haven't listened to the Shift season 1, okay, which is all about gut health. So 80% of your immune system lies in your gut. So if we have gut dysfunction, then what's going to happen? We're going to have immune dysfunction to follow. So then we have the actual organs and tissues of the immune system. So your lymphatic system are like a network of vessels and veins that run through the body, right? So a little bit like if you've got blood vessels, it looks a little bit like that, but they're carrying fluid. Okay, and this lymphatic fluid has lymphocytes in it, so a lot of immune cells. You have lymph nodes, which are kind of concentrated points where your body is really scanning for things and helping to pick up viruses, etc. And the lymph nodes are often concentrated in areas where things can get in, right? So have a look at this picture. You've got lymph nodes around, the ears and neck here, around the armpits here. You've got some lymph nodes around where the lungs are. So your body is really trying to screen all the time, looking for things that might be able to harm you. So the spleen is really interesting because it cleans out blood, but it also is a place that we create antibodies. Okay. Bone marrow health is really, really important because a lot of our white blood cells are produced in there. And the thymus makes T cells. Okay. And it has a role where it actually monitors our blood to see what needs to be done with it. So it's really interesting because a lot of these organs, right, or tissue systems, they're not really talked about. The spleen can get removed really easily if you've been in an accident, it gets ruptured, and then all of a sudden you don't have antibody production the way that you're supposed to, right? So all of it is part of the picture. And then you've got your white blood cells. So T cells and B cells form a really key part of that innate immunity. Okay, so they're going to help your body to identify, fight infections, etc. Macrophages, their job is to kind of go and clean up the debris. Okay, so they kind of go and eat anything that doesn't belong there. Neutrophils will kill and digest bacteria and fungus. Eosinophils attack parasites and clear cancer cells. So when we're looking at like your blood test naturopathically, we're actually looking at a lot of these different cells in a full blood count, right? And we're going, oh, neutrophils are low. And if neutrophils are low, that means that this person's not going to have the ability to fight infection very well. What causes low neutrophils? It's zinc deficiency is one of the main things, right? Or this herb increases your neutrophils. So let's actually prescribe that. So this is what we're looking for when we're looking at that whole picture, okay? Basophils are interesting because they actually sound the alarm when other things are picked up, right? So they're like, hey, there's something going on here. They're part of also like allergy and immunity. They can create histamine too. So these kind of cells can be elevated. They can be deficient on blood tests, and depending on what's going on will depend on what we're going to have a look at. Monocytes will help to break down bacteria, and lymphocytes create antibodies, right? And antibodies are the things that actually then go and target the specific thing. And then we have our complement system, which is really, really interesting because it's called complement, it actually just complements the ability of your immune system to work. So it helps the antibodies, it helps to clean up the cells, and it also can actually directly kill these cells by lysis, which means basically it just pierces them so it spills all of its contents. And this is why with a lot of infective stuff, there's a lot of inflammation and there's a lot of symptoms, right? Because as your immune system's working, it's killing the cells, it's spilling all the contents. That content is then causing inflammation and damage. You've got macrophage. There's a lot of stuff going on. And how does it present for us? Like stuffiness, sinus, mucus production, like we're congested, we're feeling inflamed, we might feel achy in our body because our immune system's trying to fight off this virus, which is causing all of these inflammatory cascade of reactions. So you can see there's like quite a lot of stuff going on there, heaps. The microbiome is the 2 to 3 kilograms of bacteria that live inside of us. And this deserves a special mention because this is where that immune system function comes in. And any type of immune related disorder for my patients. So whether it's going to be I'm catching colds and flus all the time, or I'm getting recurrent cold sores, or I have an autoimmune disease, or I'm allergic all the time, it always will come back down to gut health. Okay. And this is where you can take all the immune herbs in the world, but if you don't address some of these foundational factors, your immune system isn't going to be as robust as it needs to be to keep fighting off things. Okay. So we're going to go into some more kind of technical stuff now as to what you should and shouldn't do. Okay. So you're a human living a life, you've got lifestyle factors, diet coming in, stress, emotions, everything that you do in your life is going to impact the whole picture of your health. And the immune system is no exception. The difference is that for some people, their immune system will be particularly targeted. And I call this like having your Achilles heel. Like we all have our things with our health when the environment isn't right. And the environment being, what am I eating? Am I working out? What are my relationships like? What's the stress input? What's the environmental toxicity? What are all the things that are going to impact the way that my body is working? Okay. So when the environment is not right, this is when these Achilles heels start showing up. So for me, it's sleep. Okay, sleep, and it used to be skin, but less and less. So I used to have really bad acne, but I will now, when things get bad enough, actually get a few breakouts. So for me, I'm like, okay, what am I not doing right? I need to work on my stress, work on my self-care, eat better, etc. So whenever we let these things slip, you'll have your thing. So for some of my patients, they'll be like, oh, my eczema's starting to come up a bit. Oh, like I haven't had a headache in months, and now suddenly I'm getting a headache at the end of every day, right? For some people, it's going to be bloating and gut stuff. And for some people, it's going to be, I get run down and I catch a cold or a flu every single time. Okay. And this is where we need to, for those people, all of this advice is particularly important. Okay. Really important. So let's look at 5 things that will deplete immunity for starters, and then we'll have a look at what can actually help to build you up. Okay. Stress. Who gets stressed? Who doesn't get stressed, actually, is probably more of the question. This is a big one. It's one that affects so many people, and it's one that most people choose to ignore or just don't have the awareness around. Okay, so stress is huge. We all respond to stress in different ways, both through our personality types, both through how we internally process things, through our thought processes. There's lots of different things that can cause us to actually respond to stress in certain ways. So when I talk about stress, you need to think about what kind of person and responder are you, because some people know they're stressed. They're just like, I feel so stressed and overwhelmed. But some people do not. They're like, yeah, I'm really busy, but like I'm okay. I feel all right about it. But then they're getting bloated, or they start not sleeping, or they start catching colds and flus, etc. So your body's going to present things in a different way. But the one thing that I do know is that most people do not handle stress well, and are also very high in, processing stress in a way that's not beneficial to them. Okay. So there's external stress, which is, this is stress that's happening to me. I have deadlines. I've got to drop the kids off. Like, maybe my mum's sick and I'm worried about her. That's all real stress. How we process that stress is called internal stress. Okay. So how am I actually dealing with that? With this busyness, am I taking things methodically? Do I feel like I have space? Do I feel like I have things under control? Am I making a story in my mind which is accelerating that stress? So this is what we will do as humans. We will make a story about it. Dr. Libby Weaver is one of the guests on my podcast, and she talks a lot about this. She talks about how, someone might look at you a certain way, and all of a sudden you've made this huge elaborate story of what you think is going on. Meanwhile, they're just having a bad day, and we make everything about us. And a lot of the stress that we experience is us making everything about us and really internalizing these stories and what is going on for us. So there's a lot that you can actually do for that, and one of the things is really being able to understand yourself and your responses, being really mindful around it, starting to really think about, well, if A happens, what do I do, right? What is the response that Catherine has in this moment? Okay, because we're all going to have all these different responses. I could talk about stress for an entire masterclass, and in fact, I have. It's called this. I think I'm pretty sure I have a stress masterclass, but I talk about it all the time, right? Because it's so important. So we do have to actually focus on this and be really serious about getting some tools and resources to be able to shift this, and whether we realize it or not. The second big one is lack of sleep. Okay. This feeds into stress a bit, stress, sleep. And this is what I talk about in my sleep and fatigue masterclass, is the cycles of cortisol and melatonin and how they tie in together. But when we're not sleeping, our immune system will suffer. Okay. So between the hours of 9 p.m. and 1 a.m., we are doing most of our healing and restorative sleep. So this is most important for night owls and people that just aren't sleeping. Okay. We need to be able to get quality sleep in order for our immune systems to function. The third one is the modern diet. It's the stuff that we all eat and that's culturally acceptable, but is killing us slowly. Okay, so this is diets that are high in sugar, simple carbohydrates, very highly processed foods, devoid of fiber. Okay, having things like alcohol, etc. Like the way that we treat our bodies that's acceptable is actually killing us. Okay, and I know that sounds dramatic, but that's the reality of it. It's we need to change this. This is why where so many of us are sick. Sleep, stress, the modern diet, and then of course we have gut health. Okay, so as I said, 80% of the immune system lives in the gut. If our gut health isn't optimum, that's definitely going to impact us. How does it become suboptimal? Through the use of antibiotics, through stress, chronic unrelenting stress. See, we're a whole person. One thing will impact the other. In 95% of my patients, the core of their treatment is nervous system and gut function. So then we can then treat everything else, but that's actually the business end of where the healing occurs. Also, things like being on the oral contraceptive pill, taking anti-inflammatory drugs can impact the health of the microbiome as well, and eating just the wrong foods, the modern diet impacting gut health. See how, when you look at it holistically, everything's kind of connected. So if you're not very savvy to gut health and you haven't, I would highly recommend checking out season 1 of the Shift podcast. You can get it anywhere you get podcasts, but it really does a deep dive into gut health. It's designed to start at episode 1 and listen sequentially because it is a docu-series, okay? It's not just an interview-based podcast. You'll know exactly what I mean after you listen to episode 1. Okay, number 5, nutrient deficiencies. You don't have what you need to manufacture the right immune cells, right? Or you don't have what you need to keep pathogens at bay. So we're going to talk about some of these things as we move through. This is a really good example of somebody whose fingernails are damaged, and this is a classic zinc deficiency sign. This is a very severe version, but even having little bits of these on the nails can indicate that we're deficient in calcium or zinc. Okay, so we can pick up deficiency signs just by looking at patients and examining them and looking at their symptom picture as well. But then the other one is doing blood tests or other pathology to really understand your nutrient levels. But for us at Shift, our naturopaths, we can look at your diet and examine you and have a pretty good idea of what you're going to be deficient in based on that. Okay, coming back to gut health. If your gut health isn't optimal, you can be eating the best diet in the world, and guess what? It's not going to be getting through into your bloodstream. So this is where, can you see all these things are really interconnected? And if we work on all of them and start making some small shifts over time, it can lead to some really profound changes for you. All right. This was 10 things to do. And then as I put the presentation together, it changed to 13 things to eat or do that will boost your immunity. Okay. I could add to this, but these are sort of some of the key ones. They're easy. A lot of them, I want to have a look at what can you start adding in and really bringing your awareness to help with this problem. So most of this stuff is stuff that you can do yourself. And then I'm going to talk about the role of actually having support, how a naturopath might be able to help you to do this, or other practitioners. Like, how do you actually deal with this from a really holistic sense? Okay. So the first one is eat berries. Okay. And I know that, you probably know that, you probably heard of that before. However, this is why. Okay. So vitamin C is really, really important for the immune system. And it's really interesting because you'll still hear doctors and people kind of arguing that it hasn't been proven to, but it really has. What it does is it actually helps viral clearance. Okay, so if you've got viral particles in your body, you want to get rid of them, right? It's going to lead to healing quicker, and it's going to be less likely it's going to turn into severe disease. So berries are a really good source of vitamin C. And that also helps with B and T cell production, so it's part of the innate immunity, and barrier function. So vitamin C, along with zinc and some amino acids, what's really needed to create collagen and to actually help the collagen to cross-link. So vitamin C is really important for your skin, for your mucous membranes, for everything to be really strong so that those pathogens don't get in from that first line, okay? So especially dark blue ones, but actually all berries, strawberries, raspberries are also really beneficial, but these dark blue ones are really high in anthocyanins, okay? So anthocyanins help to modulate immune function. So I recommend them a lot in things like autoimmune and allergy as well, but they help to boost up immune function. So these anthocyanins and bioflavonoids are really, really beneficial for immune function. Okay. So eat them. How much do I eat? I would recommend, if you're feeling immune deficient, to eat a third of a cup of berries every day. A really easy way to do that would be just to get some coconut yogurt, some berries, and I would recommend doing some bee pollen and pepitas on top. Okay, bee pollen, really good for the immunity. Didn't make it on a slide, but it should have. But that's a really nice little immune boosting snack, right? So a couple of tablespoons of coconut yogurt, a third of a cup of berries, a little bit of pepitas, pumpkin seeds, which have zinc, and then also some bee pollen on top, and I will often, and it's a really good keto one as well. You probably would go a bit less than a third of a cup if you were keto, but a quarter of a cup of blueberries you could easily do while you're doing a keto low carb diet, and they're going to give you all of that benefit. Preferably organic if you can. Berries are very, very high in pesticides. So even if it's frozen organic berries, that's totally okay. Freezing does not damage vitamin C. Okay. But cooking does. Okay, the next one is garlic. Okay, again, you probably heard of garlic, etc., but are you actually doing it? Okay, and I've really been drilling my immune patients lately that have been sick and going, eat 2 to 3 cloves a day. Because it does actually help to boost immune system. Now, if this upset your gut, this probably isn't the remedy for you, right? So don't push it. It's because of bacteria, microbiome. We could talk about that on another podcast. But if you can tolerate it, this is a really, really good way to support your immune system. And it's a really nice dietary intervention that you could do every day. So think of a clove of garlic as an immune supplement. Okay, you're eating one a day and it's helping to bolster immunity. The best way to have garlic is to crush it and then eat it raw. Okay, so not to cook it or not to chop it. And the reason is there's an enzyme in there called allanase that helps to convert the inactive into the inactive forms, and it's actually produced by crushing. So either put it in a garlic crusher or just press it under a knife, and then you can just chop it up. So you could stir it through your food as a last thing rather than cooking it at the start, as we often would. Or you can literally just cut it, put it in a bit of honey, and try and just down it in one go, right? Or crush it a little bit, chop it up, and then swallow it, and that's okay as well. But it is a really, really powerful remedy. Okay, so research has shown it's antiseptic, antibacterial, and antifungal. It's also antiviral. It boosts circulation, and this is really important when we're trying to heal from a condition, especially like COVID, that actually really impacts our microcirculation. A lot of these viruses, the immune component is like we want to actually help to clear it, etc. But often by the time we're dealing with the last symptoms, the virus is gone. Your immune system's dealt with it, and there's this inflammatory cascade or issues from that. And COVID really impacts our circulation, so we need to boost our microcirculation as much as possible. Okay, this leads me to just raw food. Okay, raw vegetables, really. Sorry, fruit and vegetables, raw fresh food, which contain vitamin C. Actually, not all. Buckwheat also contains vitamin C, but it's destroyed when you cook it, right? So when you see those long life juices sitting on the shelf that say like high in vitamin C, they don't have any in there because they're heat treated so that they don't go off. So we need to make sure that we're eating lots of fresh foods. Okay, so salads are actually a really good source of vitamin C, especially capsicums. Red capsicums, organic if possible. Again, they're really high in pesticides. Are really, really good. Cabbage. Okay, raw cabbage is good for vitamin C and also vitamin A, which is a really important component of the immune system. Fresh fruit or frozen fruit, as I mentioned. So, passion fruit. Definitely berries, your citrus fruits as well, as long as they haven't been sitting around in storage for too long. So, in season citrus fruit, I would say with that one, raw vegetables as well are going to be higher in vitamin C. So we just need to make sure that a portion of our diet is raw. You do need to be careful with kind of overdoing it with this, because raw foods, like from an energetic TCM perspective, can be really cooling. And in the cooler months where we tend to get sick more often, we do actually want to have more warming and nourishing foods. But it's just finding that balance, because we do need to be having some of that raw food or we won't be getting any vitamin C. So, but certainly we want to be basing our winter diets on more of those warming foods as well. So the next one is orange foods. Okay. And this is where you don't have to get super complicated, right? Have a look at your diet, have a look at the plate and what kind of colors are it. So one thing that I sometimes get my patients to do is to take a photo of every single thing that they eat for a week. Right. And then put it into one of those collage apps and then have a look at the color. Is it brown? Is it white? Or is it more rainbow? Okay. Because if you have that rainbow on there, you're just going to be naturally eating foods that are good for your immune system. Okay. So don't have to complicate it. But in particular, orange foods contain beta carotene, vitamin A, which is really essential for immune function, but also is a part of barrier function as well. So, we talked about mucous membrane health. So if you're getting sinus infections all the time, etc., or lung problems, like they have a barrier, and vitamin A is an important part of maintaining that. So sweet potato is one of my favorites. Organic butter is a very good source of vitamin A and vitamin D, should I add. Carrots, pumpkins, squash, I could go on. There's a lot of, I could go on all day, but I'm just trying to give you guys sort of the key ones, if that makes sense. Cool. Mushrooms. So mushrooms impact immunity. And in fact, all mushrooms have some kind of impact, right? And there's some more than others. So obviously your medicinal mushrooms, you can get formulas with things like lion's mane, etc. But shiitake is a really good one. Spelling error there, I'm pretty sure. That is really, really beneficial and really widely available. Okay, you can get shiitakes pretty easily. So I would actually look at just getting some different mushrooms that you haven't used before. They all contain beta glucan, and including them in your diet. So having 1 or 2 good mushroom meals a week where you're having like a good couple of handfuls can be really, really beneficial. So you can just fry them up and have them with some eggs in the morning, like however you want to do it. But mushrooms are a very, very beneficial one to add in for immunity. The other one is seeds. So I spoke about pepitas, but I wanted to kind of leave this wider to all of the different seeds, because when people don't eat seeds and nuts in their diet, they become really deficient in minerals. And zinc actually is one of the main ones. The zinc is also found in things like red meat, etc. So particularly if you're a vegetarian, the nuts and seeds are really important. But zinc is a crucial part of the immune system. It helps to build neutrophils, for example, and neutrophils are the ones that will come in and actually kill off bacteria and viruses. So they're really, really important. And it's found in, not a lot of your traditional kind of fruits and vegetables. Zinc tends to be found in more of those dense protein foods. Okay. So some grains, but more like your pepitas, sunflower seeds. So pepitas are really easy to sprinkle on things, so have a salad, sprinkle a few pepitas on there, if you're having some fruit, etc., or you can just snack on them out of the bag. Flax seeds and chia, less so, but they are also, high in trace minerals. So I've included them there. I think we just need to eat more seeds in general, to be honest. Okay. Bone broth. Bone broth is something I recommend a lot for gut health, tissue healing, etc. But it does have really great immune properties as well. So it has amino acids that will help to support immunity and absorbed really easily. But the interesting one is particularly chicken soup has been scientifically researched and shown to help people overcome the common cold. Okay. And it's a very, very traditional remedy, isn't it? When somebody's sick, to feed them chicken soup. And this is the thing. I feel like a lot of the things that we traditionally have done, like if we researched all of them, we'd find some really interesting things. And bone broth, I think, is one of those. I think it's something that's really easy and cheap for you to make. If you don't have time or don't want to make it, you can sell it. Like we sell it at the Shift Clinic to our clients in a paste or a powder, and people can just make it up. So it's a really easy one to integrate into the diet. If you're a veggie, I do also still recommend doing vegetable broths around winter time. I just think they're really nourishing and soothing and healing and warming, and energetically, they're just a really good thing, I think, to build up when you're feeling depleted and to build that immune resilience. So this one is about reducing the intake of things that inflame you. Okay, so inflammation is not good news when it comes to your immune system doing what it needs to do naturally. And this is why a lot of people who had COVID, who were already inflamed, really suffered, because the COVID virus is very inflammatory by nature, but so is influenza, so is RSV, at different levels in different ways. So things that will inflame you are things like sugar, white food, processed meats, coffee. Okay, and especially depending on the quality, what are you having? Is it instant? Does it have pesticides on it? What are you mixing with it? Sugar, milk, etc. Alcohol, definitely, and dairy and gluten. Also, diets that are really high in that can often be very inflammatory for people, especially if they have immune issues. Then we need to sleep. Okay, so let's have a little conversation about sleep and what a healthy sleep is. And again, I've got a whole masterclass on this that you guys might want to tune into, but this is something that is so important, right? So it's such a critical part of your health that if you're not getting enough, your number one aim should be to fix it, right? It's just as important as eating quality food. Okay, so sleep 8 hours a night is what we want to have. Most people cannot survive on anything below 7. Okay. But when we're immune deficient, if you're watching this and you're catching things, you want to really aim to get that 7.5 to 8 hours every single night, but it needs to be quality sleep. So quality sleep looks like this. I fall asleep easily. I sleep all the way through the night. You might move around, but you're not really getting disturbed or awake. I wake up feeling like I've had a good sleep and I remember my dreams. Okay. So we're falling asleep, we're feeling good, and we're waking up feeling like we've had a good night's sleep. So if you're not ticking all of those boxes, there's something wrong. The dreaming one is really interesting because when we don't dream, it means that we're not getting into the appropriate sleep cycles. So you've got REM and non-REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. And in the first half of the night, we're doing more NREM sleep, non-rapid eye movement sleep. And this is where the bulk of our healing is happening. So I mentioned earlier that between the hours of 9 p.m. and 1 a.m. is when our bodily functions are really kind of sorting themselves out. And this is why when we're sick, what do we want to do? Sleep. Because your body knows that if you sleep and rest during that sleep, all of the thinking and all of the other functions are shut down and your body can actually heal and restore. And a lot of our immune regulation happens while we're asleep, not while we're awake. Okay. Really, really important. So we should remember our dreams because in the first half of the night, we're doing more NREM. And then as the evening progresses and it becomes the early hours, it switches. And the periods of REM sleep, which is where we're doing our dreaming, become larger to the point that most of the time we should wake up in a dream cycle. Okay, so we're waking up and we're remembering what's happening because it's in the moment. Okay, so getting those sleep is really, really important. So if you're not sleeping, what do you do about it? See one of our team at Shift or another naturopath would be my first step one. But think about your lifestyle. You know, are you drinking coffee? Are you drinking alcohol, which is a really big thing that can impact our sleep in a negative way? Are you having other stimulants? Are you watching Game of Thrones before you go to bed at night or something like that? That's really, really, cliffhangery, and it's just kind of getting your blood pressure up and getting you worked up, because we would need to really think about how do we calm our bodies down in those later evenings. But a lot of sleep issues do come down to chronic stress. So a lot of the treatment should be looking at addressing that as well. But if you're not sleeping, you need to make it your number one thing that you're working on towards your health. And until that's fixed, you're not going to be able to heal in a really decent capacity. Okay. Alcohol. How much booze do you drink? Because it will impair your immune function. Okay. It impairs immune cells in some key organs, right? It really can kind of slow things down. It also depletes all of our essential nutrients. I put these slides together pretty quickly. So typo there. So it depletes all of our essential nutrients that are important for immune function, like vitamin C, vitamin A, B vitamins, etc. So if you have a look at, what alcohol, the impact that alcohol has, it's nearly every single nutrient that will actually get impacted. So it is important to think about, okay, how often am I drinking? Do I need to have more alcohol-free days? If you're getting every cold and flu under the sun, then maybe you need to have a bit of a break and take 2, 4, 6 weeks, even more off alcohol, which will help to improve a lot of things, to be honest. But just really thinking about, what that is in your picture. The next one is relating to stress management. Okay, so think about it. Do you have a plan, and are you aware of what actually is happening for you in this stress space? Because a lot of people just don't. We're living and we're kind of like in survival rather than thriving. So we're just getting through the day, doing all that stuff. We're busy, 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 busy. And it's not until we step back and go, oh my God, I'm actually doing so much and it's a lot. And how do I actually change the way that I'm existing here? It's really interesting because a lot of us, we use busyness as a way to mask other things. So emotions or things we don't want to deal with, because in that space of quietness where we're just still, often a lot of our stuff will come up, right? Our emotions, our trauma, or whatever it is we need to deal with will be right here, and it needs to. But our conditioning is, well, I don't want to feel that, so I'm going to suppress it down. And for some people, they do that with food, booze, smoking, whatever it is. But for some people, they do it with busyness, and they'll actually say yes to everything, and they'll fill every gap of every time, and they can't sit still. They always have to be doing. And I know a lot of you guys will resonate with this because it's just really, really common. So if we're always doing and we're not being, then how are we going to actually be able to go into these spaces where we can feel de-stressed and processed what's going on for us? This is a really, really big one, especially for women. We see this a lot at the Shift Clinic. So this is where it's sometimes, using herbal medicines and stuff can help the stress, and we use them. I use them. I wouldn't be able to function at the level I do without adaptogenic herbs that keep me going. But at the end of the day, you need to have a look at your mind and mental processes. This is why last week we did a 7-day mind shift challenge to help people to tune in and work on some of these different things. I know some of you guys would have plugged into that. We have a mind shift online course that helps you to look at some of those emotional spaces and behaviors. And the third of our team at the Shift Clinic are in the emotional wellness space because we know that that's what patients need to get them the results at the end of the day. Okay. So really thinking about what is it for you that you can do. Okay, doing a bit of what I would call an existence inventory. What's working for you right now and what's not. Get support, design the life that you want. Okay. And this is about, a lot of us are like, well, I can't change it. And I think a lot of the time it's not I can't, it's just I don't want to, or I'm too scared to, which is okay. But we just need to own that and be a little bit more honest with ourselves, because then if it's like, well, I'm afraid, that if I do this, I'm not going to be able to earn enough money, or I'm not going to, well, how do we actually debunk those fears and try and find a path forward? I had a patient once, a couple actually, and they were both architects, and they both worked at the same place, and they both were doing 10, 12-hour days every single day, and they were trying to get pregnant, and we worked on the diet, we did all the stuff. And I said to them, like, you need to change this. You're not going to get to where you want to go when you're working these crazy shifts, because her menstrual cycle was out. Like, he wasn't sleeping properly. It was just, they had no space for their bodies to really be able to heal and get into the places that they needed to. So that's what they needed. So they made the jump, both, and it was difficult because they had these jobs and they had the security, but they went to a smaller firm. They took a slight pay cut, but they were happier than ever. They were sleeping through the night, etc. And 3 months later, she fell pregnant, had a beautiful little baby girl. Okay, so these are some of these life decisions. We think day to day, oh, well, I'm just a bit stressed and tired, but stress kills more people than smoking. Okay, and if you're experiencing immune deficiency, we need to think about how do we mitigate that. The problem is, right now, and in Australia particularly, is that because everyone has been so sick all the time, they're getting taken out of the workforce. So they're at home, and then their colleagues have to pick up the slack. So it's like when you're sick, you're unwell, so you're in stress. And then when you go back to work, you're in stress because, 50% of people, or even 30% of people, are unwell. And then everyone else is having to pick up that slack, which is causing more stress. Yeah. So it's a really, really big problem for people right now. And I can see why, of course, people are struggling. We need to think about creating space, meditation, definitely, even if it's just 5 minutes of just breathing. Don't think you need to clear your mind or be a monk or do any of that. Just listen to some calming music and focus on your breathing for 5 minutes a day. Okay, it doesn't have to be crazy big. I'm thinking about, do we need some healing and trauma recovery? Do we need to kind of work on getting some support to work through and process some emotions that we may have accumulated throughout our lifetime that might be causing us distress even now? And then taking medicine, maybe getting acupuncture, getting massage, doing that self-care. And then there's your actual specific medicines and things that you can take, right? So if you've followed the shift, etc., you'll see I don't actually like to talk about supplements and treatments very much at all. And the reason for this is because everything we do is so individualized, and it's really easy for someone to get a bit of advice and take a couple of herbs and go, well, that didn't work for me. Okay, but that isn't how herbal medicine works, and that's not how naturopathic medicine works. It works holistically to help your body to heal as a whole, right? And to do that, you often need actually several different things that are working together to actually get that result. So I'm going to mention a few things, and there's some things I think that are okay to take, and there's others I think that you need to be a bit cautious with. Herbal medicines are one of those. And the reason is there's a super high rate of adulteration. Okay, so herbal adulteration means because herbal medicines are expensive, what will happen is a supplier will, for instance, MediHerb, who we use, they get all of their supplies as chopped herbs, right? So they're dry, chopped herbs ready to kind of go and be macerated, which means steeped in the alcohol and water to make the liquid extracts that you see in these bottles on the wall here in this picture. I've been to their warehouse. So they have this huge room full of herbs, which is basically like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory for naturopaths. And so you walk in there as a herbalist and you can smell it, and it's so beautiful. But, without the proper testing, they don't know that they're getting echinacea. They don't know that they're getting cat's claw. They don't know that the actives in those herbs are going to be there. They don't know if they have pesticides or heavy metals or other additives. So if you're not buying your herbal medicine from a reputable supplier that does all of that testing, you really can't guarantee what you're getting. And MediHerb are one of the few that actually do that really, really well. So this is why at the Shift Clinic, the supplements that we're prescribing, they're not the same as the ones that you would get over the counter. They're really highly quality tested. The dosages are often a lot higher and a lot more concentrated because they're prescribed by people that have bachelor degrees that actually know what they're doing. So this is where, you've got to be really cautious in just taking random herbs over the counter sometimes. They may not work because they may be the wrong herb type, and they can sometimes even be harmful in certain instances. Okay, so just be cautious with that. But I want to talk about a few of the herbs that have really good research that we use because they're amazing. Okay. And if you can go and see someone or get some really good quality supply of these, they can really, really help you. So Echinacea Root is one of the biggest ones. And you can see that I've written root here, and I haven't really specified the other plant parts of these herbs because a lot of the Echinacea that you will buy over the counter is not made from the root. It's made from aerial parts or juice. And it won't really work for you that well. So Echinacea contains a thing called alkyl amides, and they're amazing. They increase our white blood cells, increase our neutrophils particularly. The Echinacea sort of works more as a primer for the immune system. So while I would give it to somebody who was already sick, I would use it more as a preventative. So what it does, it's like if you've got you imagine your immune system is an army. Echinacea comes in and it gets the defense forces ready, right? So you've got your line, you're ready to go. And then as that invader comes in, the immune system will just go in and kill it off really, really easily. And that's what the power of Echinacea is. But it has to be a really good quality, and I've seen some pretty alarming research on Echinacea comparisons to different brands as to how much of those actives are actually in it. Okay. Cat's claw is another one that we use in clinic quite commonly. It's immune enhancing, but also anti-inflammatory. So for my COVID patients, I've used this quite a lot actually. Andrographis is another immune herb. Caution with this one with pregnancy and certain things. So it's not something I would be dishing out too willy-nilly, but it can be really good in that infective stage. And pelargonium's one that not many people really know about, but I use a lot of it because it works on the lungs and then it enhances immune function. So when I'm looking at choosing herbal medicines for a particular patient, what we're looking at is how can we get the most action in this one bottle of herbs or in, what we're doing. So like I said, for cat's claw, we would use it when we would also want an anti-inflammatory. Pelargonium, I would use it when I also want lung support. And the thing with herbal medicines is they have this real synergistic effect. So if I use Echinacea alone, it's going to have an effect. If I use Andrographis alone, it's going to have an effect. If I combine them, the effect of both is greater than the sum of the parts. Okay, and this is called synergism in herbs, right? It's really cool. So this is where having a comprehensive protocol, it will pull you out of immune dysfunction. And I've never had a patient that is getting recurrent immune infections that has not been helped by these strategies. Okay, they definitely work. So then you want to think about nutritionals. And this is where I think, self-prescribing a little bit is a good thing. Vitamin C over the counter is pretty much vitamin C, right? So there's certain nutrients, there's certain things that the quality really varies between it. So for instance, coenzyme Q10, really difficult to make, has stability issues in so many products, but probably isn't really doing anything. Vitamin C, on the other hand, so things like calcium ascorbate, sodium ascorbate, even ascorbic acid, is pretty much ascorbic acid. It's easy to make, easy to manufacture, and therefore has low rates of issues, adulteration, etc. So vitamin C is a really good one that you could take as a daily. And as I said, it clears viral particles. So one of my remedies for vitamin C is actually taking just like you want a smaller tablet, so you can only absorb 250 milligrams of vitamin C at a time. So what you want to have a look at is getting like a 250 milligram or even just getting a 500 and knowing that, that'll do. But if you get a lower dose one, you would want to take one every 2 hours. Right? So as soon as you start getting sick, every 2 hours. So doing that rather than taking big doses at once. If you take a large dose of vitamin C and go, I'll just do 5 in the morning and 5 at night instead, you will get diarrhea probably because your body will build up this tolerance. But if you can space that throughout the day, it's like you're flushing out, right? And as the blood levels of vitamin C are high, it's clearing the virus, while also supporting those other aspects of immunity. Very safe to do that for a short period of time. It's water soluble. As long as you're having small doses regularly, you could easily do that for a week without any detriment. Okay, but you don't need to do that every day. Every day I'd look at taking it, if you're immune depleted, probably, anywhere from 250 to 1,000 milligrams 3 times a day. And that dosage range is because they just come in different sizes. You're only going to absorb 250, tops. So that's just what the research shows us. The other one I think worth mentioning is vitamin D. There's a lot of really robust evidence on vitamin D. So, people's vitamin D levels if they're low, are associated with worse outcomes in COVID, more respiratory infections. So, vitamin D, you can get tested through your doctor, and you want your levels to be about 110, 120 is ideal. That's by Australian standards. If you're dialing in from the US and other places, it can be a bit different. But it's a really important one when it comes to your immune function. And if it's low, we definitely want to supplement to get that up. Okay. So that's important. Iron is a component of the immune system as well. So, what your immune system does is it uses the iron molecules to sort of pierce other bacteria. So, if we're low in iron, then that's actually going to cause problems with immune dysfunction as well. So, really kind of getting some basic bloods, having a look at your zinc, your iron. You can't do vitamin C through blood, don't bother. There's a lot of nutrients that sometimes people turn up with that have been tested through blood, which are pretty useless. But, some of them you can, and definitely you can look at your zinc, copper, iron, vitamin D, and just check that side of things out as well. Good if you're just looking at some general support, taking some low dose stuff is going to be okay. A low dose zinc, taking some vitamin C. But if you're really depleted, you really want to hit it with some higher doses. And this is where it might be really good to see somebody about it and get some more expert advice so that you know what to do. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about naturopathy and what we do at the Shift Clinic, because I know that every time I do a webinar, there's going to be some of you guys that are interested and want to really have a look at this stuff. So at Shift, we help people shift by looking at that landscape of the entire health. So if somebody came in with immune deficiency, I'd be asking symptoms around, okay, how often are you getting things? What have you had? Have you had any diagnosis, etc. But I'd also be really interested in looking at their gut health. Okay, so what's going on at the gut? How are you sleeping? What are stress levels like? What are your relationships like? What are you eating at the moment? What are all these different components that could really impact you and how you're feeling? So it's not really about treating the immune depletion, although we will. It's about just treating you and building resilience within your body so that you stop getting sick. Okay, and I think it's really important because these things are really impacting your quality of life. So ideally, we want to just put together a treatment protocol that's going to help you to thrive. And your body is designed to heal. Every single minute of every single day, it's trying to heal itself. All we're doing with naturopathic medicine is providing an environment to heal. So we're looking at helping you with your lifestyle factors that you can change. What do you need to start? What do you need to stop right now? But we're also giving really tailored, good quality medicine that's going to help your body to make that shift. So we see patients worldwide online. So we have patients all over Australia. We have patients in the US, Cambodia. I think we had someone in Vanuatu the other week. And what we're going to treat with it will depend on your location. So in the US, we have a dispensary that we work with over there to get you medicine. In Australia, we'll be able to post it to wherever you are. So if you're regional or you don't have someone nearby, you don't have to be restricted to service. There's a lot of work that we can do, and it's the same. So the beauty of naturopathic medicine is that you can get the information and help people to work through this, but you don't necessarily need to be in front of somebody. So there's two things that we offer at Shift. The first one is a discovery and diagnosis. It's a 90-minute one-on-one session where we're looking at discovering what's going on and giving you that naturopathic diagnosis. So you'll understand, where am I at right now? What do I need to start doing? What do I need to stop doing? What are some resources that I need to go down? So what do I need to listen, read, consume, or do to be able to further my journey? And what is the initial prescription? Okay. And that might be all you need. You may need to just see one of us once, have a bit of an immune plan and go, hey, here's 4 weeks worth of herbs, take those and then see how things go. Or you may need to actually work a little bit deeper on some other issues. And in that case, you would then become a member of the clinic. And our memberships are 18 weeks long, and we essentially project manage you through your health. They're super supportive and super unique, and the results we get are astounding. And I wouldn't say that just because I'm the founder of Shift, but I've been working in this space for a really long time. Okay, so this is what the process that you can do if you want to work with us at Shift. So I think there's a link in this webinar screen down the bottom for the discovery and diagnosis. If not, just head to theshiftclinic.com and we'll be able to kind of help you have a look at any of that kind of stuff as well. Okay, little case study for you. Julie is one of my favorite she's one that stands out a lot because she was just so sick. Like, we get people that are immune depleted all the time, especially at the moment. But this is one that really stood out because Julie was getting 2 to 3 colds every month, right? So she would get a respiratory infection, have it for 4 or 5 days, sort of come out of it. And then before her symptoms had even cleared completely, she would get taken with another. and another and another. So she was constantly coughing. So when she had the infections, her cough would flare up and then it would go away. Her energy was about a 2 out of 10. It was even difficult for her to get out of bed. She had a high stress job. She wasn't sleeping properly, mostly because she was coughing and then had difficulties falling asleep. But she also had a heap of bloating and reflux and all kinds of things going on. So of all the, I've got my standouts that I'll remember. Like she's probably like the worst immune deficiency patient that I've ever had. So it was really great to work with her because the medicine works, right? So within 2 weeks, she was sleeping through the night and less bloated. And in the first month of treatment, she had only one cold, which she was absolutely thrilled about. At the 8-week mark, she'd been sick twice, but she said it wasn't as severe and she was recovering. And by week 18, so at that 4-month mark, she hadn't been sick for 2 months. She was like, sometimes I feel like something's coming on and I take my herbs because with these immune depletion cases, what we like to do is do like a baseline treatment where we're supporting your immune system and then we're using the same products, but we're putting them at an acute dosage when you get sick. So we're like, okay, and if you get sick, these are the things that you're going to need to take and these are the dose, which just helps to knock it on the head. So, she'd feel a little bit of a niggle, take her stuff, and she wouldn't even progress to full illness. So she was thrilled. She was like, I'm sleeping great. My gut health is good. She wasn't bloated anymore. She was happier at work. We'd really taught her how to eat healthy and to, look after herself. And yeah, she's one of my favorite immune cases, I think, that I remember because she did work really hard to work on her diet and lifestyle. And we ended up working with her for about 7 months all up. So once her initial membership finished, we did a few more sessions and then Julie was fine and she still is, which is really, really cool. So I just like to share that to kind of show like this is the kind of progression that people go through when they work with us. It's, it's quite miraculous and I believe really life-changing for a lot of people. And I think it is like really understanding that, it's, your health is your life. We can't stay in this place of chronic immune depletion, of being sick all the time, of, getting respiratory viruses that are going to take down our population. We need to take our health back into our own hands. And the way that we do that is by really discovering what's going on for us, understanding our bodies, getting that information, helping our bodies to renew, restore, and to really, just come back to that state of natural innate health that we all have. That is our birthright. It's just really, it takes a bit of effort, to get there. I think you've got to be brave to want to look at some of the places, the behaviors that we have that might be making us feel this way. It's uncomfortable and it's not easy. If it was easy, everyone would just do it and start eating well and exercising and doing all the stuff. So we do need to really think about if you're not doing these things, how do we help you to unpack that? How do we help you to actually get to a state where you take responsibility, understand where you're going wrong, be able to course correct that, and to be inspired to reclaim your own health and live that life that you love. That's why I do what I do every single day. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who have tuned in to this evening, or if you're watching the replay, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. theshiftclinic.com is our main website. The Shift is the podcast, and you'll find me on Instagram at Catherine Maslin, and we also have a Shift Clinic account as well. So please come and connect, or even just, leave us a little bit of feedback to let us know that you enjoyed the session, because, for me, I really love doing these type of things. It had a bit of a hiatus there with everything that was going on with COVID, but I would love to see you guys on next week's long COVID webinar where we talk about what happens after all of these viruses and then what are we going to do about it. So again, thanks so much for taking this time to be with me this evening, and I really hope to see you guys on the next one. Bye.